Can I just turn on a switch and India becomes like America? Perhaps not. Nothing happens linearly in the real world.
All frameworks are wrong.
Without deep science, there is no deep tech. That will drive a lot more economic growth.
America is not a great place. If you look at what's happening with the academia there, we can do things cheaper, faster, better.
We need to get our act together.
I think it's very much need of the hour.
I just want to be humble and say that I don't know where the breakthroughs are going to come from. But that said,
Shiv, good morning. Welcome to SparX. This is very timely conversation about ANRF, Anusandhan National Research Fund. I'm very happy that first of all, you have taken the plunge to shift from private sector into government. I think it's very much need of the hour. There is a lot that is being discussed about deep tech, scientific research, relevance of all this for strategic autonomy, innovation, product nation, and so on. And it's very important, someone like yourself, who has been in industry for a long period of time, you have done a lot of fundamental research, 75 or more patents that you have filed, and you've seen the journey of translating that research outcome into actual product that are shipped and have impacted at scale. So let's start there. What prompted you to, after such a long and illustrious career in industry, to shift into government, that too in a full-time role? What was the motivation?
first, Mukesh, it's wonderful to be here. I've been a big fan of SparX and enjoyed many of your conversations. So, first, look, it's a privilege to serve in this role. As many of us who have come back to India, we always want to make a difference to our nation. And of course, we look after ourselves first by joining companies and saying, and at some point, you'd like to say, can I do more? Can I have greater impact? And somebody tapped my shoulder and say, hey, this is a opportunity you should take a look at. And the government is looking for people with background in both academia and industry. So why don't you consider applying, right? So I put my hat into the ring and I went through a process and got selected. So look, since I have a background a bit in academia as well as industry, and I can understand the DNA on both sides, and I believe I still have the DNA of academia and industry. I think enabling collaboration was one of the important aspects of what the government was looking for, the Honorable Prime Minister would like to see. And, I feel it's a great responsibility and opportunity to serve, and I hope I do a good job.
No, that's outstanding. I think last month, there was this major announcement in US where I think CTOs of OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, they all joined military in formal roles with, rank and everything, which is something unheard of probably since World War II. But in some ways, demonstrates, how critical AI and other deep tech is becoming important for, strategic autonomy of the country. India, I don't know how many such examples, but I think it's a great start. I think we should see a lot more of, this migration, both ways probably. And I think it's great that, that you are able to take this plunge and government is supporting you in this very important initiative. So let's, actually, before I come to NRF, just tell me a bit about your journey as a researcher. What are the topics that have interested you in the past, your own evolution as a research professional?
Yeah. Before I do that, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the ANRF team who have been fantastic and have welcomed me. And, change and especially cultural change is always difficult. And they've been a great, resource and working closely with me through, many difficult things from their perspective. And I really want to thank them publicly on that. So regarding my journey, look, I was, just a, usual science student, and then got into one of the IITs, and then I did computer science. But after that, at that time, networking was the hot thing, and the internet technologies and so on. And but during that time, I used to also learn the violin and go every day. I had after college or after high school, there was an opportunity for me to learn at a government college of music and dance. That I think the dual perspective of having left brain, right brain, and creativity really helped me. I feel that that's something unique. Maybe in our times that helped competitiveness as well. Yeah, beyond that, did the usual stint of master's, PhD, and I went into academia. Then at some point we decided to come back to India, and at that point we showed up in. I preferred to come to IBM Research.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so,
what
yeah,
kind of areas in your, at IBM? I think you were at Microsoft also later on.
yeah,
What
yeah.
kind of topics where you spend most of your time thinking about and contributing to?
Yeah, look, I think I tend to be a little bit impatient after some time. If I don't see anything interesting to do in a few areas, then I sort of move on to other areas. So, networking and wireless technologies and IoT and so on, right, had reached a good level of maturity by around 2010 and so on. So, at that point, IBM started an initiative called Smarter Planet, and it's more like cyber physical systems. So I was really fascinated by the challenges with climate change and energy and so on. So I decided to move my entire research focus from a more of a networking and communication focus to more of a solutions, domain-based solutions focus. Actually, it was a great experience of learning something completely new. Even though I had done some interdisciplinary work in my electrical engineering, I was a PhD in computer science. I went to EC and learned a lot about electrical engineering from people who had written books in various areas. So then I learned about energy, then about environmental issues, electric vehicles, renewables, even agriculture and things like that. So I ran an interdisciplinary department there, and I spent a couple of years in Australia as a chief scientist for IBM there. And just the change of place. We also did a center in Brunei along with a lot of colleagues. You learn lots of very fascinating things. Going out to the field and things. So I then realized suddenly, hey, as a professor, I was not good at working with customers and things like that. Now I am able to do good business development. So then that allowed me to move and pivot over to being a business leader and then later CTO and so on.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times in life we see, dots somehow, looking backward, they start to connect. So I can see your journey, right? Contributing as an individual researcher, collaborating within industry, collaborating with other people, seeing the business side of things, and probably navigating things within a large company and so on, which are all probably good preparation for the role that you have now. ANRF was announced as a 50,000 crore fund, I think about 6 months ago, and you took on the leadership role there. So why don't you just share the larger perspective on ANRF? What is ANRF? Why now? What are the objectives you are trying to accomplish through this fund?
Sure. ANRF is actually a long-term project of the government of India, and inspired by the Honorable Prime Minister. The genesis of ANRF actually is in the National Education Policy, which was written up in 2017, 2018, and ultimately came into effect in 2020. There is an entire chapter on National Research Foundation. The intent there was how can similar to other foundations across the world, like the National Science Foundation or the National Research Foundation in some other countries, we have a body that is focused not on policy and funding, but just on funding, right? So that was the thought. And also things that were falling between the cracks, like any particular department like DST or DBT and other entities would fund their own domain. But what if there was something in the middle? Collaborations and funding was thing, and also there were other fund flow and other challenges, mildly put, which also needed to be sorted out. So NRF was thought of as a solution to that, or NRF at that time, and also to help broaden the distribution of excellence or research beyond our top universities or institutes to a broader set of institutions. So this was the primary goal of NRF. NRF at that time. And then over the next 2-3 years, there were a lot more deliberation, cabinet notes, and all that. And then finally, it became an act. It became a statutory body through an act of parliament. In 2023, it was the act. So there, it acquired a flavor that it also needs to do mission mode, research and so on. And it needs to be a vehicle to, drive new types of transformation, like the other things. So the 50,000 crore number is over 5 years, and the government appropriations is only 14,000 crores out of that. And we have also there was a entity called SERB, the Science and Engineering Research Board, which was subsumed, which was actually dissolved, and now it's part of ANRF. So, but it no longer exists. So that has been taken over as well. So really there is 10,000 crores of incremental investment, and the 4,000 crores was for taking over SERB and then reshaping that into ANRF's agenda. So, and then the rest of the 36,000 crores would be through catalyzing more non-governmental investments. And the theory of the case there is India needs a lot more investment in research, in innovation. And the government is doing incremental investments. But we'd also like private sector, non-governmental sector to step up and drive that. So the government felt that it's important not just for the government to put more, but also to catalyze the private sector. So I'll use the word catalyze quite often in my public remarks in that thing. So that's the other part. Now, ANRF is also going to be involved in the 1 lakh crore investment, which is on top of the 50,000 crores. So this is the 50,000 crores is all grant capital, which is grant in aid, whereas the 1 lakh crore is not grant. You can think of that as patient capital of different forms, where we are a custodian and there will be sub funds.
1 lakh crore is what was recently announced as RDI, Research Development and Innovation Fund.
Correct. So think of it as we are a funding agency. There is two types of capital. They, like any capital allocator, we have two types of capital. One is a grant and aid type of capital. The other is non-grant. And the target of the grant and aid tends to be the academia, the research labs, and collaboration between that and the startup and MSME ecosystem, and early collaborations with industry. And things of that nature, subject to the boundaries of the financial rules and conditions that we have. Now, then the patient capital, since it's not a grant, it's also focused primarily on the private sector. It is actually not for academia and so on. It's meant for private sector. So the idea is that together with both of this, we can cover the entire spectrum of what we call the TRL. We can talk more about that from the early stages of research to final, but there'll be some overlapping regions.
So I think this is very important. Let's discuss in detail. I have 2-3 follow-up questions, but starting with, you mentioned TRL, technology readiness level. So can you explain the idea behind TRL, where it is come from, and why it is important, in the context of talking about the whole research funnel?
Yeah. So TRL stands for Technology Readiness Level, like you correctly mentioned. That was a concept that came in the times of NASA, when NASA wanted to acquire technologies, and it sort of set out these stages, TRL1, TRL2, and all the way to TRL9. The idea is that you have basic research that is, roughly speaking, TRL1 to 3, and then there is a translational research and innovation, which is 4, 5, 6, and then there is more of scaling up of those validated prototypes and so on into the market. So, but I think at the same time, TRL has a more of a linear view of the world, and as you know, as an entrepreneur, nothing happens linearly in the real world. And at the end of the day, there is some degree in the 1 to 3 spectrum. I think TRL serves a good purpose, and in terms of directing research, right? Beyond 4 to 6 is, I would say, a gray zone where really one is technology has to be pushed out. But I think equally important, we have to get market requirements in. Otherwise, what will happen is you will develop technology that builds, like in the lean startup thing, right? You would build the wrong product, right? So
bridge to nowhere,
and so on, right? So I think including unit economics, market, just pure economic considerations in technology development is one facet of it, but also the market validation and those aspects is the second aspect. So I think TRL's value, in my personal opinion, becomes a little bit more blurred there, and I think it should be coupled with a more of a product market fit type thinking. And then beyond that, the real scale up is going to be a function of what is worth scaling up, what the market actually demands. So you need to have more market driven metrics or readiness levels, etc. later on.
Got it.
So it's an imperfect proxy.
It's a framework. I guess this reminds me of this quote that all frameworks are wrong, but some are useful.
Exactly.
So perhaps this is a useful framework. But broad point is I think what this framework is trying to capture is from the original curiosity driven research phase where someone just curious about understanding fundamental, nature of, universe and so on. From there all the way to a hit product in the market, iPhone that everybody wants access to. It's a long journey.
Yes.
And, all of us who are interested in the research ecosystem needs to understand these different stages and need to catalyze. So from what I understand, you're saying is these two aspects of this fund. One is this 50,000 crore fund is for earlier stage of the research funnel, which probably requires, a lot more patience and so on. And it's a 1 lakh crore is more about, in some ways, accelerating or boosting the commercialization aspect, still acknowledging that it's still very high risk capital in some ways, because, technology is far from proven. Market input, as you said, might not have come in at that point. We don't know how market will shape up.
Correct.
So in some ways, between these two funds, you are trying to cover the entire spectrum. That's the thought process.
Correct. Yeah, if I might add a few more points there, right? So one is, there is some confusion whether in this overall conversation, we forget about basic research, right? I want to, tell your audience and everyone that we are committed to supporting basic and fundamental research, because without deep science, there is no deep tech, right? And so the early TRLs and our support of universities, remember that was the bedrock of what ANRF was formed on. So we don't want to forget our roots and the important role of that, right? But at the same time, we want people not to think of, hey, there's a fund, there is more competition. Yes, there's more capital coming in. But we want people to go for harder problems. Even if you're doing basic research, take more risks and go after things that might win you Nobel Prizes or actually move the field forward significantly, right? So that is what we are requesting our, sort of grantees or aspiring grantees to do. Second is, problems don't respect disciplines, right? Disciplines are an abstraction that helps us go to depth, but real world problems cut across disciplines, and therefore solutions have to be interdisciplinary. Even if you're doing research at the early stage, we are welcoming more interdisciplinary research. It does not mean we don't fund individual PI type proposals. We do that. But interdisciplinary proposals and collaborative and team-based science, all of these are equally important. And, if you want to achieve anything substantial, I think that tends to be important, right? So that's the part of the early stage. And then the translational part is the fuzzy part, and where, I think we would like to see a lot more collaboration between industry, academia. And I think that's where I think India needs to grow a lot more. If you look at our experience in the US or other markets, I've been in Australia and other markets, it happens at an earlier stage of these readiness levels. So I think as our companies want to be product-oriented companies, as they see technology as a key area for differentiation and competitive advantage, then they would like to build technology in addition to buying technology, right? So I think as those characteristics appear, naturally we would like to see a lot more collaborative dynamic, right? So I think these are a few things I would like to add to what you said, because then that's how we would cover the entire spectrum.
And I'll come back to some of these themes to just, really understand the whole breakthrough process and navigating in different stages. But I want to, in some ways, maybe just fast forward to a punchline and then backtrack. Punchline being, see, we are living in the world, Shiv, where it's really driven by technology now. If you look at what is happening with the AI, it's having, potential for profound impact into pretty much all aspects of economy. Huge implication for the strategic autonomy for any country. We saw even the recent, Operation Sindoor. Fortunately, because of investment, defense tech, and so on, there are a lot of places we were able to really come out on top and demonstrate to the world that we have, technological superiority. ISRO has been a great shining example, but not too many examples. If you look at the zoom out and we ask a hard question, where does Indian science and tech today stands in comparison to, global center of excellence? I think it's not going to be a very encouraging scorecard. So what's your perspective in the world that we live in and the pace that is moving? What is your kind of personal view of how critical it is for us to really, really get our act together and aim for research-oriented, supremacy of some kind?
No, absolutely. As you can imagine, my view is that we need to get our act together, and we need to recognize that technology is changing, and also the nature of technology is changing very rapidly. Okay. So, but I think we need to move from a frame of, okay, it is changing rapidly, so what do I do? Okay. I have two options. One is I can say, okay, I'm too slow, I can't move fast enough. Therefore, I will just go acquire technology. So that's the buy view of technology. And increasingly, with the challenges that we have in globalization and strategic autonomy and so on, there are constraints on that, right? And so, if you really want to be competitive, buy is even if I want to have a buy strategy, it's starting to become more, even business view. It's becoming more interesting to start doing some build. Okay, now which means that if I'm an organization who has not built technology, and have not assimilated technologies and had an organization that respects and sort of makes technologies thrive, it's a big cultural change, right? So I think that's one frame. The other is, if you're a greenfield company and we want to do build technology, so you have to start from a completely new sheet of paper. I think we have a lot of great opportunities in terms of talent. One is the talent that is already here in India. The second is and there are many universities, many labs, and so on. I think if we can get them to work together, I think that's a huge resource. And we change our perspective and start collaborating. That's part number one. Point number two is we have an excellent diaspora and a lot of well-wishers, and we have sort of more free trade agreements and other things. So I think we can be. I can't comment about the past, but forward-looking, clearly a technology-driven future, and we need to go beyond the buy mode. And therefore, you have to start building. If you want to build, you need to build talent, you need to build capabilities, and you need to start participating earlier in the risk-taking venture, right? So the government stands ready to catalyze and be a partner in this, right? But end of the day, the government investment is only going to be, as I said earlier, to catalyze, right? The rest of it has to be done by the private sector. So that's the trick we are trying to figure out how to.
And part of it is some ways somewhat, cultural or mindset. It's I know comparison with China is a bit dangerous, but I think most people acknowledge that if you go back 25, 30 years ago, there was not that much difference. If anything, India probably had advantage because of, we had a huge past in the research, at least institutes in the country, our, first Nobel Prize from the country was in Bangalore 100 years ago, right? C.V. Raman, right? And a few others after that. But things, something happened over the last 25 years, and this is where we are at. We know where, a lot of Chinese innovations really taken the world by the storm, and especially in the last 10 years, because things are finally starting to exponentially grow. But and look, you're 100% right. Government cannot do. Government can at best catalyze things. What needs to happen in the larger ecosystem to bring about this cultural change, mindset change, like genuine investment in R&D and like respecting research. Research is a different animal. It's not you create a product, you achieve a product market fit, and you have $100 million revenue 5 years down the line, or cash flows. Which is what a lot of Indian ecosystem is used to. How do we go about changing that?
First is to first recognize that second game is getting over, right? So in fact, the simplest business is just a trading business. I buy, I sell, right? So if I can get a good margin, why bother, taking all the other things, right? But that business is over. We can't just pick up a racket and become like Federer or that sort of thing, right? Or you can't say just because I have a Zerodha account, I become like Warren Buffett, right? So there is a lot of knowledge.
People trying.
People try. Okay. So I think it's important to realize that even though the mechanisms for trading and other things are there, and also as we have put out lots of infrastructure, the roads connect the nation. So, many of the things that were barriers earlier has saying infrastructure has gone. And now as we have more free trade agreements and the tariffs are lowered, that will increase competition, because at the end of the day, competition is going to drive, investment in innovation and research from the private sector point of view. Now, coming to many other points, right? Obviously, I don't have a boilerplate or a silver bullet answer. A few things, right? I believe from a government point of view, we need to be consistent and long-term in investment. We can't have the stop-start investment cycle. So ANRF will intend to be consistent and long. Okay, so that means that whether we deploy grant capital or the other sorts of patient capital, okay, we will be there for the long term. Okay, so I think that message I want to get across, right? So then, okay, now that lays a foundation. Now, if you look at the National Science Foundation and so on, which has done in the United States, It was born after the World War II, and so it has been there for 75 years, right? So you're seeing the compound interest of all of that.
Yeah.
Similarly, after the Sputnik moment,
Mm.
the US created this new entity called ARPA and DARPA, right? So that did special projects, more of a product management style of research. And that's had huge successes, right? So I think ANRF is trying to do a little bit of both of these things in a single umbrella. So our intent is to now do it and be there consistently over time, right? So I think the consistency is important. Otherwise, we'll have these, like these in AI, we've had winters and summers and things like that, right? So we have to be there through thick and thin. Second is, the partnership with the non-governmental sector, broadly speaking. Okay, it's the philanthropy, the CSR, the startup and innovation ecosystem and this thing, right? And the broader private capital and private industry. I think we need to have a far more vibrant types and more exciting partnerships. And one is to show new partnerships, but then again, be consistent, right? Keep doing more and more different types of that, right? And then we'll see the compound interest. Any effect, whether it's Nobel Prizes or impact or products, are going to be the outcomes of all of these. So I think early, we got to get our act together on the inputs, and then hopefully the processes and other things will change, and then that will lead to outputs, right? So that would be the.
So one of the a number that's quoted very often, that in India we are spending something like 0.65% of our GDP on R&D. I think China number is something like 3%, and I think US number is also something similar. Now there are two sides of this debate. Some people say we need to achieve certain level of economic prosperity before this number can go up. There is other dimension to this is private industry needs to start ramping up, and as to your point, move beyond trading business or building factories and considering that as an innovation to actual R&D. Is this so? And look, there and the third side of which is saying that we can do things cheaper, faster, better, and be a lot more resourceful. So we don't need to compare dollar for dollar. It's what you pay a researcher in US is not what you pay a researcher in India, and because the purchasing power parity is different, living standards are different, and so on. Where are you? Like, what is the right framework to think about this number? And if you think long term, does this number need to go up? Does accountability need to go up? Efficiency, like, how do we process this?
The short answer is all of the above. Okay, but if I can unpack that a little bit, right? Number one, this 0.65% to 0.7, between 0.6 and 0.7 for discussion purposes is correct. Okay, now, but if you look at it, GDP is also growing nominally at anywhere between 10 to 12%, right? So in absolute terms, we have more than doubled our investment over the past few years, right? And over the decade, for example, and more than doubled. So the CAGR is significant in terms of absolute numbers. However, you're correct. If I take a relative number or a normalized number, it needs to go up, right? So that talks about the R&D intensity, right? Now, to be fair, every sector wants to increase their share. Education wants to increase the share, or health wants to increase the share. But then there's an overall pie, and we have to make macroeconomic choices, right? That's number one. Number two is at the same time, as an investor, you invest when there's returns, right? So we also have to start becoming sensitive. Should I just turn on the tap and suddenly go from 0.65 to 3? Okay, but then the returns is, just like if I take an automotive analogy, if I just had the ambassador car engine, okay, will it run like a Tesla? Okay, so we have to, at the same time, take the engine of innovation and convert it into a different model, maybe even transform it to a new powertrain and so on, right? I think that's also equally important. So the way I look at it is, for us, if I look at the resources we have in our area, one is we have people resources, and we need to have more capital resources such as, labs, equipment, translational facilities and things like that, right? Do we need more of this? Do we need more better people, different people? Absolutely. I think we have quantity of people, no question, right? And there are more and more people, there is more and more labs. India has about 300 national labs. We have many, many institutions, of course, the IITs, IIScs and other things, but we have central universities, we have state universities, we have ICERs, we have triple ITs, we have NITs. So I think we need to up the game in all of these, both at the top level of the institutions to be the world's top, as well as the rest, right? But probably the most important message I will say is that we need to collaborate, right? So whenever we need to share resources, whether we have specializations, can we collaborate together to make things better? I would say that that is part of getting our act together, and same thing is collaborating between industry and academia, or with the startup ecosystem and so on, right? In some sectors it's starting to happen, but we need to make collaboration a habit, collaboration a culture.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the theory is that you will have better inputs, more inputs, and better return on capital, and therefore more impact on outputs, right? So I think that's the direction of flow we'd like to get to. I think there are many more details, and then but our goal would be, on one hand, we want to increase the input, catalyze the other part of the inputs that is not happening. If you unpack the 0.65% to 3% and look at the difference, in most of the other countries, there is a lot of private capital that is there, which is missing here, right? Yeah. So we'd like to get that catalyzed. But at the same time, should we increase our investment? Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And but should we increase the return on investment? Yes. But I think the tricky part is how, and also culturally. So I think if I were to say a few things, one is aim for bigger things, aim for more product-oriented things. Then we have challenges in ease of fund flows, making things, ease of doing science. We are sort of working on sort of making changes. And again, I should thank my ANRF staff who's really coming together to do that. Similarly, I think the collaboration and outcomes need to happen. We need our faculty to be more entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial, even in their core research, right? Even in looking at impact of the research, beyond papers and publications, papers, publications pattern. The Honorable Prime Minister told me once, we have to think beyond papers, patents, and say what is the impact beyond that. Okay, even in fundamental research, one can talk about the impact. I think once we start thinking more about not the input side, and talk more about the productivity of the capital, and and see how that output comes. On one hand, as we increase productivity, the input will also naturally increase, right? So that's the nature of investment as well.
And can you also help the viewers understand this, the 0.7% or so better? So about, if we say we are a $4 trillion economy, 0.7% is roughly $30 billion in round numbers. Broadly, where it is spent, where is that money going? Because as you say, in absolute term, $30 billion number is also not a joke. It's a meaningful size number. And where does that money go today? To the extent you are able to.
Look, I think you can look at it in terms of percentage of GDP as well. I don't have all the numbers on my fingertips, but see, there is a part of that about, say, the government spends out of the 0.65. The government share is between 65 to 70% of that number, right? So about 0.4, 0.5, I would say, of the 0.65, right? I have to look at the exact numbers. But of that, there is a lot of money going into our national lab ecosystem, like the ISRO investments, the DRDO investments, and the ICAR investments in our agricultural universities. And then there are many line departments, like DBT has its bunch of brick institutions, which do fundamental. There's National Institute of Immunology and Virology and so on. So there are many such national institutions.
This money in the institutes is going for research or for education?
No. Okay, so the way to think about it is the national labs, right? These are all our national labs. We have almost about 300 plus national labs. CSIR is another, class of institutions, right? So these tend to be very specialized in particular domains. They have fantastic domain expertise, and we need to leverage those. For example, the National Institute of Virology or Immunology and so on. They've been very key partners in, say, the COVID things, right? So, and there are translational institutions and so on and so forth. That's one class of institutions. Of course, then we have the educational institutions, which do research as well. They have two jobs. They have to do education and they have to do research, like, of course, the IITs and so on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of institutions of that nature. Then the central universities, state universities and so on. then it sort of tapers off. We have many institutions for teaching, but then the research active institutions are fewer and far between. Right? If you look at that distribution, most of the papers and publications or patent, even just by quantity, they come from a very small sliver of institutions. Now we want to broaden that distribution, but more importantly, we have to look beyond quantity to look at quality of work. And for our labs and so on, while each one is having a clear mission and doing their own things, we need them to collaborate more with the rest of the ecosystem. So on one hand, the Gary Becker's theory of human capital is that end of the day, ultimately it's all in human capital that we invest in. So some of the human capital is in these institutions like ISRO and so on, right, where they are in mission mode. DRDO has a mission mode and so on, and they do a lot of projects. But if we have more spillovers, that will drive a lot more economic growth, right? Just like spillovers between academia and startups creates one kind of spillovers where between industry and academia. So we will be looking both at the productivity of institutions and raising their quality and excellence, but also how they can work together, and working together will lead to spillovers. Somebody working with a CSIR lab and an academia, they will learn how to use the lab's facility. So our capital that we have invested in these institutions can be better utilized and so on. And will lead to upliftment and so on. So I think that's why I believe a lot in collaboration and use of our whatever we have invested in. Like we have, sort of capital or say EM microscopes and other sorts of facilities in many places, but they could be used better. They could be shared better. So in India, you're right that on balance, our people investments need to go up, and also we need to pay more and so on. But also our capital investments tend to be higher, but less well utilized. So whatever investment we're making, we need to make sure that the productivity of the investment is better. And second, it's being better utilized and for higher impact, right? And all of this institutions need to talk to each other and collaborate. Of course, not everybody can collaborate with everyone else and so on, but we need to don't take that out of context. But broadly, better collaboration for impact. I think that would be the key frame.
Understood. So in this next segment, I want to drill a bit deeper into how different stakeholders in the research ecosystem can collaborate with the ANRF or the RDI component of that. So let's start with the existing industrial houses. Whether a small business or very large conglomerate in India, they want to work with you and tap into some of these funds to do something useful, to catalyze, in your words. What are the avenues? How should they approach you? What can do with you? And then I'll ask the same question for a variety of other stakeholders. But let's start with the
that's a brilliant question. So look, I think let's look at where we are putting a lot of capital and how we can leverage that better. For example, we have a program called ARG or Advanced Research Grant. Now that grant program is not for industry, right? It's for academia and research labs. But we are promoting a lot of collaboration there. But as part of that, we encourage collaboration with other stakeholders like startups, with industry, with others. So where even industry PIs and even international PIs can be an honorary PI within the program, right? So that's one good example. Now there, I'm not setting aside a budget for industry or giving the money to industry. But the money is going to academia or labs. But the honorary PI makes it easier to collaborate, right? And you can have budget as part of the program, which can be used for the collaboration, right? As long as it's clearly written up and used for that purpose, it's perfectly fine, right? So that lowers the bar for early stage collaboration. So we are trying to make it easy for people to collaborate the lower, and these are hundreds of projects we'll support. So I'd encourage.
So maybe let's take an example. Let's say I'm a EV company. I don't know, maybe Ather or Ola Electric, and I'm interested in a particular component or in the powertrain. How do I leverage this collaborative with academia to,
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So now if your first is to make relationships with individual researchers and counterparts in the university side or in the lab side, right? And now they are submitting proposals to me, and now you could be an honorary PI, from one of these entities with them, right? So that is the simplest way to get started, right? Number one. Number two is we have more mission mode programs, which are in specific verticals. So we have launched one in, you mentioned electric vehicles. So we have an EV mission. These mission mode, we call it MAHA, or Mission for Advancement of High Impact Areas. So we'll be launching more missions soon in areas like medical technologies or AI for science and engineering, and then many more will come over time. So these are more, I would call, vertical investments where these are focused in specific areas. Now there we are explicitly asking for collaborative groups to come and submit proposals. Now in the EV program, for example, we had academia and labs collaborating, and we had private sector contributing up to 10% in that particular program. And but the money was not going to the private sector in that. So, but for a small level of investment, you were able to leverage or be deeply involved in a program where we have funded multiple groups of entities, right? So that is a second program. However, going forward, we are starting to liberalize some of those funding mechanisms, where some part of that funding can also go to startups and MSMEs. So if you are a startup or an MSME, you can, going forward in some of these programs, of course it's not there in all our programs, and over time that's my hope that we will be able to liberalize more. In a single project, we can have collaborations, and where my capital will go to academia, like research labs and the startups, and they'll play different roles, right? Some will be more fundamental and early applied research, some will be things. So that is a second mode. Right now, of course, beyond that, we are looking at some more bespoke venture builder type partnerships, where there could be a large entity which would like to do something very different, right? And we are looking at specific partnerships of those nature, where we can co-fund the venture portion, and then the builder portion works together. But we are looking at this for some sort of a breakthrough research entity, and we are doing some early experiments, and based on our learning, we may programmatize that.
Sure.
So we will also be funding other translational research centers where we can have consortium model of participation, right? So all of this gives an opportunity at different ways to put a small skill in the game. And get access to early technologies. So this is one class. But then the RDI is where we are directly funding or co-funding private sector, right? So that is, but not in the grant form, but that would be more in terms of a balance sheet.
And how does this RDI part work? Let's say maybe two parts to this question. Let's start with the startup. I'm a fresh startup. Let's say doing something in drone space or building satellites, or want to do something ambitious in semiconductor. Let's say I want to compete with GPUs, eventually. I come to you. How do I first of all reach out to RDI? What do I submit, and what does the process look like? What can I ask for? $1 million funding, $10 million funding? What are the mechanisms around this?
So first on RDI, right? So it is in the process of being finalized. So currently we've had cabinet approvals. And then there is one more governing board approval that is pending. And first, DST is the nodal entity that is setting up all the rules and regulations of how RDI will be done. And, so, and RDI, the way it works is that, the parliament is appropriating a bunch of capital, say 1 lakh crore, and that will come as a 50-year interest-free loan or capital to ANRF, which will be put in a special purpose fund. Okay, now, and that special purpose fund will be approved by our governing board, and and ANRF is a custodian of that fund. Now, and then the executive council and empowered group of secretaries can appoint second level fund managers to go and onward invest pieces of that capital. They will be given, mild, sort of targets of, when I say mild targets, I mean, we'll not give 0% interest rate to that. It'll be a non-zero interest rate that we expect in terms of that capital, but it'll be patient capital over a longer period of time, and they'll have different types of investments they can make and a different nature of capital. But it can be equity, it can be debt, it can be mezzanine, it can be all kinds of other things, which makes sense for that class of deep tech investments. So the government is not directly investing. We are appointing second level fund managers, and we'll be also crowding in other capital. Now that other capital can come in from venture capital players. It can come in from say, venture debt. It can come from any other, even a corporate venture. Folks, they can propose to the government that they would like to form a fund or and there are focused research organizations like TDB or BIRAC and other institutions, or even the research parks like IIT Madras Research Park or other research parks. They can bid to be one of the fund managers. So if they are approved by the executive council and they will get a chunk of the capital. And they will have an investment committee and the governance committee, etc. The investment committee will ultimately make the investments. So a startup, so then think of it as the 1 lakh crore gets expanded into a larger pool of capital because of the crowding in effect. And then that capital is available to be invested in different sectors. So if somebody is a drone company, they will go to that particular fund that invests in that sector.
So just to make it, a little more, look, a lot of, hopefully, a lot of very ambitious, entrepreneurs will be watching this. And the first question will come to them, and how do I reach out to Shiv, or where do I apply to? So is the answer that wait until some of these other intermediary funds are set up, which may, I don't know, take another 6 months, 1 year?
No, probably much earlier than that.
Earlier, okay. That's
so
great.
the number one, so wait a little bit. Okay, so it's not too long, hopefully. So the funds will first the final set of approvals and the rules, regulations, guidelines, and so on has to be finalized. So there's a few more steps for that. And then the announcements will be made about second level fund managers.
Okay.
And those are the vehicles one can apply to. It's, and then, ministries can also work with RDI to determine maybe new additional types and categories, because through the empowered group of secretaries, they can appoint new types of funds that can be put out. So, and contacting me may not be very helpful because I would say wait as well.
So look out for announcement of these second level fund managers. And these are going to be in what, dozens, hundreds? Like what's the, how extent, these, how many, these intermediate
So look, I think the goal there is to invest in meaningful ways, right? And in critical and not in subcritical investments. I think that's the general view. Okay, so some funds might invest, they may make 5 crore to 50 crore investments. Some funds might do 500 crore investments. Okay, so it depends on the nature, type, and the mandate given to the funds, right? In terms of the investments, right? So some funds might be more appropriate for large players who are just doing pure scale up. Some funds may be involved in, sort of TRL 4 plus. But in general, TRL 4 to 9 is the range of investments that RDI will make, and it's not a grant capital. So, sometimes people come to us asking for grant capital in RDI. That is not correct. We would be, and those are balance sheet investments which are made by a classic investment committee and expecting returns on that.
Got it. I think this is a good segue to a second part of my question. Now that, since you established that there's going to be a lot of these intermediary fund managers, one of the lament in the Indian startup deep tech ecosystem has been that where are the deep tech funds? Because most funds, by nature of who they raise money from, their return expectations, life cycle, and so on, they usually, at least historically, they will look for product market fit in max 1 to 2 years. Which means you need to almost demonstrate a proof of concept from day one, go out in the market, acquire customers, so on.
Correct.
Now, I think what you are saying is because of RDI, we'll be able to catalyze these intermediary funds. Now, let me ask this question differently. Let's say I am, someone who wants to set up a deep tech fund. Do I need to be somebody with the prior, venture capital investment track record? So, and that means, we have a fairly mature venture industry. Can somebody from that industry look to step out and create a new deep tech fund? Can existing venture funds say, I'm going to create a allied deep tech fund with maybe different rules of the game? Who are the people who can reach out and say, Shiv, I want to be one of these intermediate fund managers?
See, so again, what I will say is that the way this is being organized is that Department of Science and Technology will be the nodal ministry, and then they will be coordinating with all the other ministries. And ultimately, as I said, there's a group of secretaries and executive council. So the CEO of ANRF, my agenda will be a lot more on the ANRF core and as part of my direct investments. So there I am making capital allocation decisions more directly. Now, in terms of, since the final, capital decisions will be made by other fund managers, that will be done by the second level. So now the question is, what are the types that will be allowed, and who will be allocated those? So that process will be coming out shortly.
Okay.
So that's number one. Second is all the types of folks that you mentioned. If you've had either prior investment or you're putting together a fund, you're welcome to approach the RDI group, so which is being formed right now as we speak, and then represent your case, and then there'll be a formal process for the selection of these entities with the high level setups of the type and nature of the allowed types of funds, right, and the degree of patient capital, all of that, right, will be at high level outline will be put out by the SEC. And I want to mention that many private investors as well as the private sector has been consulted in the whole process. But that said, specific, yes, all kinds of capital. And in fact, I'm really pleased to see a lot of activity where more capital is getting formed and, which can come together and crowd in. So we are happy that that catalyzing effect is starting to show some signs of positive outcome. But I think, yes, please get started. But at the same time, please do engage with the RDI team, which is, and I would say give them a little bit of time, maybe a month or two, as those rules and so on are getting involved. So there will be a process by which one can engage.
Right.
But being prepared is a good idea.
Okay, great. So maybe if I can build on that, and you correct me if I'm wrong. If let's say there's anyone who is aspiring to set up a deep tech institute, start doing your homework now. Figure out which industry, which area you want to focus on, do the literature survey, build a relationship with academia, reach out and talk to researchers, because there has to be some source of original IP, etc. And start putting together a blueprint for the plan.
Yes.
Very soon you will be able to present your case to the right agency, right setup in the government, and you can definitely get some leverage. And you can then get a multiplier on that by sourcing private capital as well. But if it all this pans out, we should have a huge multiplier.
New classes of deep tech, like you said, right? So I would say two parts, right? One is if you're an entity that's going to execute, that is, you're going to actually do the deep tech technologies, you're a startup, you're an early stage entrepreneur and so on, right? Build these relationships, work with the grant side of our house and work with the grantees to build those capabilities, right? And as I said, there will be more translational facilities. There'll be many more things. And we also welcome, whether from the CSR side of companies, partnerships, we welcome other sorts of partnerships where I can aggregate capital and I can increase my grant capital that I put out into the ecosystem. Right? Think of that as expanding the market or the pre-seed, if I were to use the venture terms, right? Now, that is one part, right? And building those relationships and those collaborative parts. Now, the second is if you're a fund manager or you're putting together capital, now there you're going to be bidding for being a second level fund manager and so on. So you have to be very clear on your role. If you're either a corporate entity having capital or if you're trying to put together a small consortium of investors, so that would fit into the fund manager role. But then if you're trying to bid for those funds and so on, there is one is that is a balance sheet capital, which is hopefully patient, has different IRR expectations and different return expectations and dilution expectations than classical venture capital. So it gives you that patience that you need for the deep tech thing to grow. And also through the grant capital, we'll be doing a few more things which will help defray or reduce the technology risks and do early stage market validation even through the grant side, right? So our goal is that 4 to 6 TRL levels will be an overlapping region where either through our mission mode programs or other translational programs, we'll be doing more, right?
Got it.
I can't spill all my beans today, but we'll be doing more.
We'll get you back in 6 months, I think, too. But hopefully,
but I would encourage partnerships with us and explore specific things where we can do bigger things together, right? So I don't do small transactions, but we do bigger transactions.
Clear. Now let's change gears and talk about the researchers. At some level, research is about researcher. People who need to have a lot of depth. It is again, very slow, patient, long-term commitment. What are your views on catalyzing that ecosystem? The reason I ask is, just like both of us, went to IIT. You fortunately, went to research, but most of us, at the time, we want to get a good job and get into industry and so on. The research path in the past wasn't very attractive for a lot of people. And then people, moved to West. If you look at, lot of most of AI companies, the key guys who are driving all the innovation, majority of them are of Indian innovation. In this, all the headlines about $100 million bonus, many of them are, people who grew up here, who went to institutes here, but, now doing their pioneering work out there in the West. What is being done to, really catalyze that part of the ecosystem, both within the country and perhaps to bring researcher of Indian origin back to India?
Yeah. No, look, I think this again a long-term thing. Can I just turn on a switch and India becomes like America? Perhaps not, right? But it's a long-term. I think we have to make the environment a lot more attractive. I think some of us who came back to India, we had personal reasons to come back. Perhaps not the professional was not the number one reason. We probably came back for personal reasons. We need to flip that switch and make that a professional should be an equally valuable reason to come back, right? So I think for that, what does if I just work back?
I'll just add one thing. So for me, I moved back in 2007. The reason was absolutely professional, and because I felt the Indian startup ecosystem was ready to take off.
Yes.
That was in 2007-8, which was correct. No, we had a lot of arbitrage type of opportunities, but hopefully, if we can, not flipping the switch, but create an ecosystem where for research also it becomes a great place to
exactly.
And America is not a great place. If you look at what's happening with the academia there, it's pretty depressing right now. What's being done. So there's also a window of opportunity.
Yes, I can't comment on what's going on in America, but I can certainly say that we intend to revitalize our Indian ecosystem. It's interesting. You mentioned 2007, that's a similar year, same year I came back as well. So there I had primarily a personal reason to come back, but I had a choice between research labs in India and academia in India. At that time, I chose to come to, a research lab, IBM Research. So there, the existence of IBM Research allowed me to come back. Now, I think one dimension we'd like to see is a lot more private research labs in India. That's a dynamic I'd like, and I'm really passionate about catalyzing that. In fact, I'd like to have conversations with more entities wanting to set up more research labs in India, where R is, and there we should not confuse R with D. Okay, often R and D are conflated and so on. So we need hundreds of private research labs. Now, the reason I mentioned that in the context of the ecosystem is those are the employers of the future. Right. Because if I'm going to be churning out or funding a lot of PhDs and stuff like that, otherwise they will have to go back into some postdoc circuit or they'll be driven out of the country for further thing, right? We need a gainful and exciting thing, right? So I think if we want to make India a vibrant place, we need a lot more private investments, and that tends to be through institutions that are called research labs, right? So I think that's a dynamic we are keen to seeing how to drive. In some cases, it could be PPP. In some cases, it could be other partnerships where we can catalyze. So this is another dimension of area where if there are research labs that get set up, we can see, hey, can't you set it up in a research park? Okay, and if you do that, we can do something to help catalyze the collaboration, like research visitorships or other things we're thinking about. So I'd like to see how we can help hundreds of such research labs to pop up, because I feel we don't give enough attention to that portion. So ANRF intends to focus there as well, but more as a end part. It's one of the other dimensions. Right? Now, the second part is within our existing institutions that already exist. How do we revitalize and usually the answer is two parts, right? One is specific facilities and this thing. The other is you may have centers, but how do I then do projects towards impact, right? Rather than just say, give me money, go away, and fund and forget and things like that, right? How do we govern our projects towards impact? And how do I enable projects which fund multiple entities? And you heard me earlier when I mentioned that we may fund a combination of academia labs and so on. So, ultimately, this RDI is other forms of capital. So one is we are organizing different forms of capital, different nature of project and funding investments. And more facilities through translational facilities and other things. And then if I look at all of this and step back and ask, am I creating the conditions for more people to come back, right? And and is the broader trajectory up both on absolute numbers as well as percentages? Thing. I would hazard to say that is probably the answer to both are yes. But can I do faster? Can I do more? Absolutely yes. But I think we cannot do it alone from government. So that's why I'd like to extend the arm of partnership and say we are willing to do significant partnerships. I want to also mention that we have partnered with the Gates Foundation and the Wadhwani Foundation as early examples of this. I invite a lot of our CSR partners to come and talk to us because we can work and co-invest with CSR. We can invest with private philanthropies, family offices, and also international family offices and others. So I'd like to invite more of them to come and talk to us. So that expands the, I would say, the pre-commercial portion and even consortia for investment. So we are going to be putting out many programs where we'll make it easy for co-investing. All my programs will be open for co-investments.
Can you also paint a picture of how does this private research lab look like? For example, I'll just maybe go out on a limb and say, let's say I'm interested in, really helping build a original AI research lab. Now, if I were to think about that, where it needs to be housed, should I, partner with academia? It should be an academic campus or a research park. Could be a, separate building here in Koramangala. It's a small building with 20 research. Like, how does it look like?
Yeah, I think I would say two parts, right? One is any investment towards research, right? Where you're, as a precursor to product, right? We would like to encourage, right? So that's one. Now, whether we are a party to that or not is a next level of question. So the government's view is that if that is internal research, let's say you're doing some research that is helping your own service business or anything like that, those are classic, sort of, I would say, sustaining research, to use Clayton Christensen's term, right? That's internal business, right? Now, we are interested in seeing what is new breakthrough research. We'd like to see how those sorts of things.
Right.
So, whether it's our RDI or, the grant area where we might do bespoke deals, we would like to encourage those things. Now we're talking about institutions, right? See, as your capital is yours, right? So, we want to give you the capital allocation flexibility on where you'd like to put that capital. And what you want to do, right? You want to do AI, that's great. If you want to work on, say, something else, that's also great. So we are open to the fields where it makes a difference. But it should have the breakthrough characteristic and the other characteristic. Now, we are happy to, sort of stimulate or work with any of our institutions. And if the access to those institutions is difficult or if you're having difficulty in findings, so we can connect the dots on those fronts. Now, but so those institutions can be either one institution or other institutions, or if you want to set up something greenfield, that's also fine.
Okay.
So if that greenfield thing, there's two options, right? One is away from research parks or away from the. So our goal is to prefer more collaboration, right?
Sure.
So one is where you put it, right? In general, the past has taught us that if it is at least closer to the cluster of institutions, whether it's in the same city or, certainly the government of Karnataka is doing a few things, or every state government is doing a few things. There are clusters like the Life Sciences Cluster or the ISC or the ITM Research Park or IIT Bombay has its own thing and so on. So I think I'm using the research park just as a proxy for a place that is close to academia or whatever, or it could be other labs as well, research institutions. Now, just because you're co-located doesn't mean the collaboration will happen. So we are interested in explicitly catalyzing those collaborations, right? So we will look at our capital or whatever catalytic thing we do to really to promote those collaborations. And in the context of trying to do more breakthrough work and also try, expanding the mandate of, in some cases we may have, a mandate of helping our state universities and others. In other cases, it may be more limited. So I think these are the few top level things I would say, but we are open to, conversations where, I'm happy if you're interested, we'll happy to.
No, excellent. So I think what I'm hearing is, first there's a lot of flexibility. I think you are also, open to trying out a variety of models. In general, I think close collaboration with the academic institute will help also build this ecosystem and the cross-pollination of ideas. And, even catalyze things like maybe perhaps faculty or PhD students, they may want to step out and become co-founder of something new, right? Which is
that'll be great.
Which is how, a lot of companies that we know in the West started there,
Correct.
Like some people, dropping out from their PhD programs and, starting a company and so on. And
I think in the West, there's a lot of a long history of private research institutions, whether it's Allen AI or, the Max Planck Institute and other sorts of things. Some of them are government stimulated. If you look at the Fraunhofer Institute, so it's like a 30% government, 70% private. That was originally meant to, help aggregate research as an institution for MSME equivalent and so on. Or if you look at SRI or other sorts of institutions, right, all of them have, have been supported by government investments in various ways. So look, we are open to new ideas, and we welcome. End of the day, if I just step back, I look at if I want more research investments in India, it will occur through institutions.
Clear.
And those institutions should be more, private driven. Now that could be purely private or PPP or whatever, right? Where we can catalyze in some ways. We're open to that.
Excellent. No, great to hear. Just on the kind of final segment, Shiv, we have talked a lot about the funding mechanisms as well as the machinery for catalyzing the research ecosystem, but the actual research areas themselves. So from your vantage point, if you look at next 5 to 10 year view, what are some of the critical areas where we really need to ramp up? You would like to personally see breakthroughs. You use the word breakthrough many times. Which are those areas? And the reason I'm asking is that I want to also inspire potential entrepreneurs and VCs looking at get some perspective. These are the emerging deep tech areas which are worth investing, whether someone wants to set up a deep tech fund or a startup. So which areas interest you?
See, history has told us that you don't want bureaucrats sort of telling specific
You're not enough a bureaucrat yet, it's only 6 months. So.
That said, look, I just want to be humble and say that I don't know where the breakthroughs are going to come from. But that said, certainly there are broad areas where we are making more directed investments, right? Or, those directed bets. And those directed bets can be saying that, hey, how do I catalyze a value chain coming out of India, like the electric vehicle and the manufacturing value chain. Wherever India's announced mission, like for example, there's a manufacturing mission and so on, right? And wherever we have strategic autonomy challenges, right? In the area of AI, we'll be doing a lot more at AI at the intersection of science and engineering. That is, how do I revolutionize how India does science and engineering? Because that's going to radically change, right? Science and engineering can be directly modeled. Deep science can move to deep tech much faster. We believe there's a huge opportunity there, right? Similarly, medical technologies. You can always look at it from a point of view of an indigenous, okay, I'm importing 80% of all the medical equipment in India. That's a frame. But I personally don't subscribe to that frame. That's a dimension, yes. But ideally, I'd like us to be competitive. If you are just looking at it as import substitution, you will never be competitive. You need to make affordable, high quality medical equipment out of India, right? Think differently. And then that becomes more of an entrepreneurial statement. So we intend to catalyze that through some areas, right, of missions. Now, there are other areas like critical resource minerals. There is energy transition. If you look at the, the public announcements in RDI, they have mentioned other areas like clearly we have 48 or more percentage of our workforce in agriculture. Unless we make agriculture have greater returns and farmer income increases in different ways, and there are different pathways there. For example, biomass to bioenergy and connecting it to the energy ecosystem and so on, right? So what are the breakthroughs in biotechnology needed, drug discovery, all of these areas, right? And at the same time, how can we get better at designing engines or subsystems, precision components, and therefore as there is materials, there is components, there is bigger subsystems, and then ultimately bigger systems. We always look at the final product like an electric car, or of course we have scooters and two-wheelers and so on, which we are doing great at, but or new LCA fighter jets and so on, right? But how do we do it so that we can build up our drones and other industries? So while the end products are excellent, I think there's enough opportunity in the intermediate component industries as well, right? So we are looking at all these areas and seeing where there are critical gaps, where in each area we'll partner with a ministry because I don't have expertise in some areas. Like if there is something, I have to partner with MHI, the Ministry of Heavy Industries, or I partner with ICMR on medtech, and other, we partner with DST on this area and many other areas like science and technology, or we partner with MOES. So we will be partnering with many of our colleagues within government. So that way we try to make it an all of government this thing. But in terms of the specific areas, we will be picking up bets in a few areas, and we'll be announcing, these mission mode programs. Those are signals that those areas matter.
Sure.
Okay. But it is not that the only things that matter. The Deeptech, set of fund of funds and the particular areas of those choices and types will be made public. There's already public announcements that they've mentioned a few areas that are out there already. Those are all starting points.
Yeah.
But if somebody's working in some other area that's not there, right? I would not lose sleep over that, and there are other ways to get it funded,
Sure.
right? But I would say wherever we are killing it in terms of say space, and you've funded a space company as well, right? So space tech, combined with say agri-tech or other things. So those crossover areas or manufacturing, those areas are also exciting.
Sure.
So we'll be ANRF will look at interdisciplinary areas in general, cross-disciplinary or cross-ministerial areas, or we will amplify particular missions. Or so, for example, there's already an India semiconductor mission. There's an India AI mission.
Yeah.
So we'll be adding a research layer in partnership with them.
Clear.
Or if there is a manufacturing mission, we'll be partnering with the MHI and adding a dimension. If there's a critical resource minerals mission, we'll be adding partnership there. So we'll be working with some areas. But suppose I've left out something. Let's say textiles I've not talked about. If the textiles ministry comes to me, we may put together a program.
Sure.
So we tend to be, partly, since there are many things to do, we are happy to partner with different ministries.
Yeah.
And also private sector. Say if private sector feels that, hey, this area there needs to be investment, I would encourage them to also talk to a ministry, bring the ministry together with me. So then a combination of my capital, the ministry capital, private capital, that's a good formula for launching a new mission mode.
Got it. Clear.
Yeah.
Maybe just a couple of areas that you probably didn't mention, but I'll be curious to hear your perspective. In last week in Bangalore, we had this Quantum India Bangalore event, which I think you also part of. It was very well attended. From what I'm hearing, the participation was almost 2 to 3 times what the organizers expected. So there is growing interest in quantum technologies. That's one area. What's your perspective on that? And similarly, also around fusion. Now, I don't know whether people are working on fusion in India or not, but there are numerous startups which are which were funded over the last 10 years. They are now starting to show net positive, outcome. And that's an area where even quantum technologies are playing a role in catalyzing, what's possible fusion. Are these two things anywhere, on the radar from the larger ANRF RDI mission?
Yeah, so the quantum is already called out as one of the areas within RDI, and as part of when the definition of deep tech includes quantum space and other areas, just to be clear. So the answer is yes. It's just that the way we operate from ANRF is that where a department is already taking leadership in running a mission.
Yeah.
We allow them to do what they're doing. In other words, ANRF investment is incremental to that. For example, DST is leading the quantum mission. DST is also leading the geospatial mission.
Yeah.
So if DST feels that more can be done, and or the community feels more can be done in some particular areas, right? That ideally are interdisciplinary, quantum and X.
Sure.
Already as part of the quantum mission, there is quantum communication, there's quantum sensors, there's X, Y, Z, right? So now if there is particular areas of gaps that needs to be identified, this is what I told in the panel as well when asked about this. We are happy to step in and work side by side with DST.
Yeah.
But there, the initiative for that would come from DST. See, as a apex organization, we are there to set the strategy for the nation overall across all areas. But it doesn't mean that we do everything, right? So where the initiative has already been led by line departments, like DBT knows what they're doing in specific areas, like in biomanufacturing. So I don't need to step in there. But where AI meets biomanufacturing, we partner with DBT and MIT, right? So that would be the collaborative frame with which I would like to present it. But, also I've been on the job for 4 months, so there have been a few focus areas I've picked up. Right. It doesn't mean the other areas are important, where if the area is not receiving investment, or if it is receiving investment but needs more, end of the day, these are all choices, right? Sure. I don't have particular comments about fusion, as you know, it's an interesting topic. But, obviously we'd love to learn more about any specific areas, and end of the day, it's a capital allocation decision, right?
No, great. I think this is, fascinating to hear, Shiv. I think this is need of the hour. I'm, first of all, thrilled that, you are now working on this mandate from within the government. I think looks like it's getting all the right attention. changing ecosystem is obviously not easy. It takes effort, it takes patience, and it requires this collaboration that you talked about for a lot of different stakeholders to come together. But I think I want to also underscore, I'm pretty sure you will agree, that the time has come where India has to take its deep tech agenda very, very seriously. It's probably as important as any other agenda we can think about. The world will be shaped by technology in unimaginable ways, and as a home to 17% of humanity, we need to be in control of our own technology. And I'm pretty sure the mission that you are driving along with your team and the other stakeholders in the government will do its bit to kind of move this ecosystem forward. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you. This is very exciting, and I think more important than what we are investing is the entire community that needs to come together. And also, if you look at the characteristics of deep tech and product driven things, of course manufacturing has its own challenges and so on. But if you look at our service industry and the export industry around IT that got developed fairly quickly, deep tech has those characteristics where if we can use our brains and develop the product and so on, you can actually sell to world markets. Because, of course, as India grows from 4 trillion to 8 trillion to ultimately 32 trillion, the local economy will increase. But it's ultimately the global markets that matter, where there are lower frictions and where we can make the technology happen and bring it to the world. Those then become the new engines of economic growth, right? So we believe that this overall area of technology-led growth and deep tech especially fits that characteristic, and that's one of the reasons why the government is pushing.
A lot to look forward to. We'll continue chatting, Shiv. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
At SparX, we aim to bring to you stories of exponential impact. We share in-depth analysis of what goes behind success stories. If you find our conversations interesting, you can join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to SparX on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other audio platform of your choice. If you have any suggestions on who we should invite or what topics we need to cover, just let us know in the comments. We are always listening, looking for ways to improve, and keep getting better as we go along.